Thank you. Hello, are you enjoying the second day? Very good. So a little bit about me. Oh, it's so weird to hear myself. A little bit about me. As he said, my name is Amanda Cavallaro. I'm originally from Brazil, but right now I live in London. I work for a company called Gamesys, and I'm all about community. I love building communities. I love traveling to new countries and meeting people like you. In London, I organize a meetup about Google Cloud Platform, and I'm also a Women Tech Makers Ambassador, and I'm also recognized for being a Google Developer Expert for the Google Assistant. What it means to be an expert, it's not that I'm better than anyone. I found this on Twitter that Wasim wrote, and I really identified with that. It means that most likely I found more failures than other people. Ooh, it's very warm. So we can see that every 10 years or so, there is a major shift in computing. There is a major shift in computing. So we started from mainframes, and then we have desktops and personal computers in our houses, and then we had access to the internet, not only in a few universities in America anymore, but now we could use it from the comfort of our homes. And then we got to the era, to the decade of mobile phones. So you could bring all that experience that you're having in your house to your mobile phone. And nowadays, the decade that we're currently living is all about virtual assistants and AI. So now you can use your voice, which is the thing that you've been using your whole life to get things done in your world. For instance, if you are, I don't know, for some moment temporarily you cannot use your hands because you're cooking or because you have some sort of impairment, you can now use your voice to interact with your devices and appliances in your home. So it's a very exciting decade to be in. And ever since we started using these virtual assistants, I think starting with Siri back in 2011, we can see that people are asking queries in very different ways. Before, people used to, for being afraid that the machine would not understand what they were saying, they would go straight to the words they needed, for instance, weather today. And then along the years, people started to interact more. They would say, is it going to rain today? And nowadays, you can even ask how you would ask a friend or a person, should I bring an umbrella? So it's really exciting. How many of you here interact with virtual assistants? May it be on your phone, maybe Siri, Google Assistant, devices? How many of you has actually built any types of bot? Maybe a Slack bot, a Twitter bot, Actions on Google bot? Interesting, quite a high number. Right, so here are some of the actions of the commands that I use myself in my house. So, for instance, I can say, email my husband, I'm going to be late for dinner. In this case, I wrote the name of my husband, but you can also set in your Google account like husband and the name of the person or an alias. You could also say, dim the lights if you have a smart home, if your home is smart. You can also say, play my favorite list. So it would read from the service that you have linked to your account. In my case, it's a Spotify. Then you have what's on my calendar today. So you can read from your calendar, from your Google account linked. In my home, I linked both mine and Saverio's. So when I hear it, it knows, when I say it, it hears my voice and tells about my calendar. And when he does so, it's the same for his own calendar. And then I can also say, ask what's on my to-do list. And then, I don't know about you, but I used to ask for the same things over and over every day. So now I just gave my timer names. As you can see in the picture here, I created a timer called egg. And then I just gave it like 2 minutes. And then now I just say, put my timer to play named egg. So in my case, it's egg, but you can do in anything that makes sense in your own world. And then before coming to the conference, I tried to see everything that I was asking the Google Assistant to do for me. And at times, it's weird because I have Google Homes all around my house. And then I was at the hotel and I said, okay, Google. So I looked around, oh no. So I had to actually make my phone work with that. So some of the things that I can do is hear the news, the weather, the reminders I have before my flight, so I make sure I don't forget anything. And then one thing that I hate to do at the airports is having to look for the screens that you're always in the middle of 1,000 people trying to read it. Now I just go on my phone and I ask, tell me about my flight. Especially because the gates, it usually shows some seconds or sometimes minutes earlier, and I'm like, I'm so better than everyone here. I know everything beforehand. And also I could ask it to open my slides. So there are a number of things you can do, and you can also set it yourself if it doesn't already pre-exist in your account. And another thing is, okay, I told you I did all of these commands, but I could also do something which is called a routine. For instance, this one that I have, I say, okay, G, I'm commuting to work. And now instead of me having to say all these commands one by one, I can actually say every time I say this command, you're going to do multiple things for me at once sequentially. So for myself, I set these three, which is tell me about the weather, tell me the reminders of my day, which meetings I have today, and then tell me about the traffic, how my commute is going to be for work. Because I actually have two ways that I can go, and depending on the day, I just take the one which is going to be better that day for myself. So I'm originally from Brazil, but my husband is Italian. And for Christmas last year, we gave both families a Google Home. And it's so interesting. I was there just 2 weeks ago, and I like to see how they are interacting with the Google Home we got them. So this beautiful woman here is my mother-in-law. And we were in the kitchen and we were going to cook together. And then she has this cookbook from 1989, and she was telling me that she has all these recipes that her mom, who unfortunately is no longer here, told her about the recipes, and everything is just there. There's no redundancy. And it's not really indexed because only she knows the order of the recipes. And then she was asking me, can you find me that recipe of something in Italian? I don't even know what that is. And then we were talking, what if we added your cookbook to the Google Assistant? And then she said, yeah, but how does this thing work? How are we going to index it? How are we going to say that pizza comes first, or I don't know, risotto comes second? The thing is, you don't really have to index. You don't have to say number one is this or that, because how do you interact with this? With voice. So maybe I cannot say one of these weird Italian names, so I can just give it an alias that I can pronounce it. So we can have two names, and in this way, I'm bringing to different types of people ways that they can they can work with the Google Assistant in a way that makes sense for their own reality. So it was really fun to do this with her. And then another thing that I also do as a user in my life is that I have a shopping list that I share with the people from my Google account that makes sense to see what I'm going to buy. Sometimes when I travel to Brazil, I share with my family. I say, please buy paçoca because I really miss eating that. Or I share with his family. And this is something that you can access from your Google account. I don't know the URL, like shopping.google or something. So I can either go on the web, add things, or on my phone, or on the Google Assistant, even if it's a smart display or just with voice, I can add things, I can remove things, and then if you actually have a screen, you can see the things that you checked out, the things that you added. So it's a great way of keeping context, and you just don't have to worry because this is all Google built this for you. And okay, so I told you many ways that I interact with Google as a user, but I'm also a developer, so I also like to build stuff. Here are some of the actions that I've created. The first one, if you have a phone number, you can actually call my chatbot and interact with it. The second one, I don't know if you've ever seen the cardboard boxes that you can use a Raspberry Pi and also have this similar experience that you're having with the Google Assistant. And then the third one, which I'm going to go more in depth in this talk, is how I build a karaoke box. And also how you can search, so I told you I have this meetup in London. So you can search for the organizers from my community by technology, email, or name. And then I explain step by step how you can do that. And the last one is the same thing, but I did it also in Brazilian Portuguese, because I'm originally from Brazil, and I feel that by living outside, I'm not helping my country as much as I can, so I try all the content that I create, I make it in Portuguese as well, so I'm still, I don't know, helping my country to go forward and more people to be educated and learn about conversational actions. Quick video.
Turn the lights on.
Sorry.
Okay, Google, make the lights blue.
So this is a video from my house. I rent a house. I don't have my own house, but when I do, I want to make it completely smart. So because I didn't want to invest a lot of money on any hue lamps at the moment, I just went on Amazon and I bought this little thing, this LED stripe, that by connecting to the controller, it was not me who created, I'm just using an action that was created by someone else. I can change the colors of this LED stripe in my house, and then when it was Christmas, we just put it next to the Christmas tree, and then we just say, turn on the Christmas tree. So I'm making my house smart, even on a budget. So it's really cool that you can now use the Google Assistant with the existing hardware you have in your house. And let's say that you have other appliances. You have a bit more money than me at the moment, and your house is already ready to be smart. So instead of you having to build, how do I, as a developer, create the button on or the button off? You don't have to worry about reinventing the wheel. Google has already built this for you, so you can reuse these traits which are already, that already exist out there for you. And there is a huge list of appliances that you can already use it. And there is a code lab. If you just search for code lab, smart home, Google Assistant, or if you Google search it, you're going to see step by step how you can make this as well. And by the way, all of the links that I'm talking about right now, I already automated them to be tweeted. So if you go on my Twitter, you can find all of the links there. And also something that was announced just at Google I/O a month ago is that now you have app actions. So one example that they did was, imagine that you built this Android app. Is anyone here an Android developer? So I'm going to say this to 2 people and to potential other Android developers. But just quickly, because I know there's also many Android users, so maybe you can get this information as a user. So imagine that you have this application that you're going to transfer money to someone. And nowadays, you have to add to these inputs all this information. But imagine just saying everything you have to do, you have to say in one sentence, and then all you have to do is click a button. So now you can also save time in taps in your life, both in how you can find the app on your phone with voice, but also as a developer, you can reuse these technologies and capabilities already out there in your app. All you have to do is create an actions.xml file, and then you can reuse these Android dip links that already exist. There is a link here in case the 2 or 3 people who raise their hands are interested, and also the other people here. So there is a number of ways you can reach the users now if you build your action. There are, at the moment, 19 languages available, more than 80 countries. Someone told me that Greek is still not there, but hanging there, there's many languages every year being announced. There's more than 1 million actions created. In case you're not familiar with this term actions, it's the same as we have Alexa skills or just an app. So the name that the Google Assistant team gave it is action. And you can use it in there are more than 1 billion devices nowadays that are using the Google Assistant. So imagine the possibilities if you're going to develop something, the amount of people who can access your app. And it doesn't have to just be something, because you're thinking, Google, is it just Android? No, there is a huge number of ways and platforms that you can use it. And this is also something that was announced at this conference, Google I/O, that now imagine you, if you have that phone on the right, with T9 trying to type something to Google search or trying to use voice in a phone that, let's say, is not the phones like most of us have here. So for countries like the one I'm from in Brazil, this is such a, it's just a change for us. Just we're being more included to use technology. So you as a developer, if you're going to develop something, you also have to think of these people. I don't know about you, but I started using computers when I was 6 years old, and I came from this mindset that I first started using Windows, which was not that easy to get started. You learn the way it is. It's not very, forgot the word in English, that you learn very easily. And then MacBook, you know the word, I know you're thinking it. And then I thought that MacBook was easier to use. Then you can even see the babies using iPhones, and it's way more easier to get started. But now, voice. These people who are getting started with this phone nowadays, probably they don't have the same background as me and as many of you. So you have to think that many of the things, the way that you're going to build your action or your apps, if you're a mobile developer, you have to also speak in a way that these people understand. They're also being included to the equation. And another thing that I keep on saying this because it's really awesome, because you don't have to reinvent things. Imagine you having to implement voice, all the nuances and all the, even from the same country, people who speak with different slangs and different way of speaking. So there's so much data that has already been trained for you and available out there. Nowadays there's nearly 30 languages. There's things like context that you can keep in the same context of the conversation. For instance, I can say, okay, G, what's the weather like in Greece? What can I do there? What is the weather going to be like there tomorrow? So you can also reuse these things called contexts. And also as a developer, you can set new contexts that make sense to you. And so there is something called conversational actions, which could be just chatbots, as many of you know, or it could also be things which are not 100% automated, but things that use APIs, or you could at some point hand it over to a real person talking. And you can have full control on what's being said of the conversation, the back and forth of the conversation. You can build custom intents. For instance, in my wedding, we give flip-flops to women so that when they're dancing on their heels, they don't get tired. I don't know if you do that here. People are thinking that's weird. But yeah, so that's a custom intent that makes sense maybe only to me. So if you're building something which is very narrow to your business, you could create these custom intents and entities that make sense to your business. And you can also train the types of things that the user might say. So it's impossible. It's difficult for you to train all of the things in a context, but you can train the way that most likely people are always going to say, where is ta-na-na. So you could just possibly, if the people are saying the same sentences but just changing one word, most likely that word is going to be something that has to do with that part of the conversation. So you can also use that to your favor, and you can also extract keywords. For instance, if I say flip-flop, that makes sense to my wedding application. And then you can also create brand awareness. Do you know what Aikido is? It's a martial art. I practice it for many, many years of my life. And someone practices Aikido. Someone's happy taking a photo. So even though I'm not in Brazil anymore, I still want to help the social project I was doing there. So I asked one of the people who he was actually a brown belt. I asked him, he's a designer, can you create this art for me? And then I said, can you ask the kids to just write down some questions so that people can learn about Aikido? So we made that brand on the right, the logo that I say, everyone, no matter their background, they're welcome to practice Aikido. And this is the brand, this is the message that I want to give. And I can bring that brand to my chatbot or my conversational action. And then I have to pay attention to the language I'm going to talk, right? Because there's kids who are using my app. So I have to pay attention to use language which is suitable for their age. Is it better to use slangs or speak in a more formal way? So your app can also say your brand, can also say your persona, the persona of your app, sorry. And then you can also re-engage with your users. Just don't use this feature for no reason. I hate when I sign up for a conversational app, especially on Facebook, and then all of a sudden I receive a pop-up notification and then I just simply unfollow. But if it makes sense, please don't abuse of this. If it makes sense, you can use push notifications. Let's say it's a bit harder to do it with voice, but if your action also uses screen, you could send a pop-up notification to the user. I don't know, for something. In this example I have here, would you like to hear more tips about this? And I, as a developer, I work mostly as a front-end developer. I always have to worry about creating responsive content. But because it's not me who is creating the backend or of that, I don't have to worry that, okay, this is how it should look like on a small screen or a big screen. You build it once, and it's going to be available with the capabilities that that device or the screen, if it does have it. But you, as a developer, what you have to do is really manage what are the expectations from the users. If it's only voice and you're trying to use, you say that the only possible way is for them to use a screen, it's probably going to crash. So the idea is you don't have to worry. If you create something with a screen, no matter the size of the screen, it's going to be shown. But if you're trying to show content that requires a screen and your code is not really going according to that, then it's going to crash. This is just something that I was building with my dad, because my dad is a software developer, so most of what I know about computer I learned from him, and then nowadays I get to teach him how to build things together, which is cool. You possibly are going to do that with your kids, nephews, whatever people in your life as well. Another video about interactive canvas that was just announced at Google I/O. It's about 1 minute, because I just got a short clip.
Welcome to Super Pet's adoption event. I'm so glad you're here. Are you interested in adopting a pet today?
Not it. Yes, okay.
That's great. I'll be helping you today. It's nice to meet you. First things first, what's your name that you'd like to put on the adoption form?
Well, Mandy.
Nice to meet you, Mandy. Taking on a pet is a big responsibility, so if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a question or two. Now, a pet will need to be fed and exercised every day. Are you going to be able to feed and exercise your pet daily?
I think so, yes.
That's great. You seem qualified to continue with the adoption. I'm somewhat of a matchmaker when it comes to matching pets with the right owner, and I think I have the perfect pet for you. They're cute, furry, and ready to be your best friend. Are you ready?
Yes, I am totally ready.
The grand reveal. It's a hamster, just for you.
And then she actually brought her hamster on stage. It was the first hamster to ever attend the conference, and they actually have a badge as well. So this is something which is using a technology which is not new. If you're a JavaScript developer, you probably already heard of Canvas. But now you can also use this interactive canvas on the smart displays. So it's basically a set of tools that you can use: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and WebAssembly, and you can have pixel level control of the rendering. At the moment, it's not available for production. You can only do it and see it in the simulator for the preview, and I believe only for games at the moment, but they are investing a lot on this, and I don't know when, but soon there's going to be more resources available for this as well. So it's an exciting time if you're a web developer to start to build for this as well for smart displays. So again, about the app that I told you that I created for my wedding, I'm going to talk about some apps that I've created. My guests came mostly from Brazil, and I found myself having to answer the same questions over and over, and talking about, because I got married in Italy, and the culture is 100% different. And then I had to explain the same things over and over. And some of the questions were like even hard for them to ask me, some things that they were maybe shy to ask me. So they could just talk to that bot, to that thing which was automated. I wouldn't know who it was that was asking the question, but I could actually see like the flow of the conversations, but there was no name linked to it, unless for some reason they set it to the app. And there were other things I could have done that I didn't. Like, for instance, would you like to RSVP? Maybe I could have gotten the credentials, the name of the person, if I had asked them, would you like to link this to your Google account? Would you give me permission to know a bit more about you? So I'm talking to you about something that really saved me a lot of time, that made sense to me. But for your business or any other thing, may it be huge or minor, you can use Actions on Google to help you out with that. Another thing that I've done, in January I gave a talk with John Skeet. Possibly you know him, right? The most active user on Stack Overflow. It was so nice. He's such a good person. So we created an action that you can search for a mentor to help you to get started with some types of technology, programming language or something. And then we use sentiment analysis to know when the person was saying something negative, like they would ask many questions, but then at some point they would say a sentence in the lines of, but I don't think I'm good enough, I don't think this is for me. So then we used, by saying, if the sentiment is negative, call a real person. This is the action that I told you that I created, that you can have this interaction via phone. So the person was talking on the phone to the action, and then at this point, when they said something negative, the call would be forwarded to a real person, and they would no longer be using the agent. Agent is the name that we give to this conversational app. It's actually just a work in progress. We don't have a real person to call at the moment. We just put each other's phone on the day for the demo. And if you'd like to see how we build this both in Node and in C#, our code is on GitHub. And again, you just go on my Twitter and you get the link. Yeah, and as of now, Telephone Gateway is only available for phone numbers in the US. So I actually had to buy a phone number to play with this. I'm really hoping it's available in more countries. So if you were to use a different technology like Twilio, I don't know if you know what Twilio is, if you were cool. If you could use Twilio to do something like that. As of now, if it's Twilio just SMS, there is an integration very easy to do with the Google Assistant, with Dialogflow. But if it's with voice, there isn't a straightforward integration. You'd have to really, I personally didn't do it, but you'd have to go in the documentation and see how you could do it. And, okay, you're not a developer, you're in tech, or maybe there's someone in your family or in your world that you would like them to create a bot. Do they have to know how to do something in Node or in C#? No, there are ways that you can create actions without a single line of code. I created two. Most of the apps that I created are to show during the conferences. So I created these two. All I had to use was a Google spreadsheet. And then I would add the questions, the answers, and some tips. And the way that you can invoke these actions are, if you're, I don't have my phone with me, but if you go on Android, you just long press the home button. And then every time you create an action, you have to say which are the invocation sentences so that users can get to your action. So the same way that you would Google search for something on your phone, not only Android phone, as I said before, you can then enter the action created by someone else. So if you are on your phone and you say one of these invocation sentences, you're going to be inside of my app. If you then want to do something, what's the weather like today? My action does not support that. So you'd have to first quit to exit it. Then you go back to how you normally do your queries. another video of something you can do. This one doesn't have any audio. Is it going to play by itself? Okay. So this is something that, this is the simulator. This is the name that I gave to my app, which Talk to Bruce Tips. And then you can see here that I'm switching to the display tab to see the visual of it. This is a video that Brew, a friend of mine, created, which is a tutorial. So sometimes you're watching a tutorial, but you really just want to go to step 2. So I wrote, next step. You can see on the right that it went to the next step on the video. Then I wrote, previous step. Maybe I want to see that step once again. Or I want to go to the last step. I already saw this many times. So you can have control on when you're watching tutorials to which point of the action you want to go. This is the view on the phone. Also, if you had a smart display, you could see the video. Maybe you're cooking something and you'd like to see step number 1, how to do it. Again, all I had to do, let me show you the next, not the video, let me show you the next slide presentation. All I had to do is I gave the name of the action. Of the video I'm using at the moment, because for instance you could do something. You have 10 tutorials, and then you would do which tutorial you're talking about at that point in time, and then what's the step number, what's the title or subtitle you'd see for that moment, the timestamp, and then the text written at that point in time. So this is also good if you're not a developer, but you're creating or managing content. Imagine the possibilities of how people can interact with your content. And again, this was just announced last month, so not many people are using this. So it's a very exciting time to get started and be one of the pioneers. So as I told you before, I was going to go a little bit more in depth about the karaoke action that I've created. This is how have you ever used Dialogflow before? Cool, not many people did, so I can talk a lot about it. So this is the natural language understanding that was bought by Google. It used to be called API.ai, maybe you've heard of that one. So they bought it, and then later on they renamed it and of course put more functionalities and named it to Dialogflow. You have a number of things on the left that you can do. You have the intent, which is basically everything which is being said by the user and responded by your agent back to them. And if it's going to use, if it's fetching information from an endpoint, and then you'd like to have access to the parameters, it's also there where you state all of that. You have the things which are called entities. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. There is something called knowledge base. If you have an FAQ website, let's say, or a CSV with all the questions and answers written in the same form, you can simply import that to your action, and then you don't have to rewrite the questions and answers. It's really easy to get started with it. There are the fulfillments, which is basically where you're going to get your endpoint from. It could be like a Google technology such as Firebase, or it could be, I've done it with Azure, I've done it with AWS, so it doesn't matter where your endpoint is, you can fetch it from there. There are integrations. At the moment, I believe there are 16 of them. So say, I don't know if you ever built for Facebook Messenger, or if you integrated with it, or with Telegram. So basically what you have to do is to get, I'm going to say this in a very general way, you get a token from both sides, you connect it, and then you can have your application working in different channels. You have the training phrases, basically all of the sentences that the users said, they talked to your app, they're going to be written there. And there are also things that are trained in the wrong way. Maybe it's trained that, I don't know, tomato is not a fruit, and then you can say actually it's a fruit. And then so you can also have this control of changing, even in the context of your business. Maybe something actually changed. It used to be something, but now it's not. So you can retrain the data. And also you can have a more in-depth view of this history of the conversation. And there's also analytics that you can see usually from where the user starts, from welcome to which are the intents that they are asking more often, and you can see the workflow of the talks. And there's also pre-built agents and small talks that in case you'd like to get started, but you have no idea how to get started, there are some apps which are already built for you with all the intents and the actions, and then you can just play like a playground. You can play with it, change a few things here and there. Right, so karaoke action, how I created it. This is training phrases, is where I write all the sentences that the users might say. And then I just write the first one. So there is an entity already created by the by Dialogflow that they understand many artists, but they didn't know my favorite band, which got me really mad. So I had to train it, and then I had to train some of the songs from it as well. So what you do in this moment is you just give it some patterns on how the users might ask the questions and the words they might look for it, and then you train. You say, Sonata Arctica is an artist, Shy is a song, Backstreet Boys is an artist, that is a song. So I wrote many of these, so I didn't have to write all the 4,000 songs that I imported from this data set that I use, but I just trained a few of them, how people would ask the questions. Because this was an action that I created, I didn't want to train it with very long sentences like, I would like to listen to that, because I'm not a machine learning expert, but have you ever thought of how you train song names? Songs can have one word, 4 words, it can be any word. So I had a really hard time training for songs. Music artists, it was way easier to train because, as I said, it's already an entity that pre-existed. So I don't have access to the data set that Google used, but I imagine it's quite large. So this was very hard for me. I talked to many machine learning experts. Help me, how do I do this? I still don't have a full answer. I still had to do a workaround that I'll show you. But if you know the answer to this, please talk to me, because this is, to me, so hard. Right, and then the second thing I wrote is a prompt, which is very important in actions. I'm expecting 2 things from the user: to tell me the name of the artist and the name of the song. But sometimes it's not going to understand it very well. So I can do a short prompt to just ask the person to give me that piece of information which is missing. And at this point, I don't know if you're users of chatbots, but it's really annoying when it's very long and not to the point. As a user, sometimes I just stop using this type of applications. And then so these are the 2 entities that I created. These are we call it the developer entities. I called one named song, and I created the second one named artist, and in that one I said, can you add all of the system entity music artists that already exist from Google, but can you also add these metal bands that it doesn't know, because I really want to sing them. So these are some of the system entities that I told you about. So if you are on this UI and you type something like 58 kilos and you press return, it's going to tell you that's a measure. Or if you type, I think at the moment there's almost 30 of them that it already recognizes, so you don't have to train the machine learning model like I had to do for songs. And then one thing, so this, when you create this action, if you used to use API AI, you know that when you're going to choose your cloud provider, you could either choose Heroku or Google Cloud Platform. But as of now, when you click Create an Agent, you also create a Google Cloud Platform project. So if I am to go on my console of GCP, and then I choose the name of my project, as you can see, karaoke, I have access to the traffic, the errors, and all the APIs that you can see in the bottom that I was using for this action. I was basically using Stackdriver to see the errors. I would use also the Firebase console, but this one is more in depth. I'm using Cloud Functions, and I'm using the YouTube Data API. So on my GCP console, I search for APIs. I say that I would like to use the YouTube API, and then I try it. I click to try this API. And then I told you that you can host your endpoints in many places. The one that I used is Firebase. If you're not familiar with Firebase, there are a ton of things that you can do with it. There's tons of services available. You can host web pages. There are 2 types of databases that you can integrate with your actions, and many, many more services. The one that I use is Cloud Functions. So I always deploy my functions with my code there. And every time I do a query to my database, it already updates it. And the same action that I built with Dialogflow, I could also use from all these variety of platforms. You can simply hook and connect them. So this is what the Firebase console log looks like. You can add, like, I made my code in JavaScript, so I would add sometimes console.log to see if it's getting the song correctly. As you can see there, nothing else matters. And then I would remove my console log. You also have access to the response, the headers of your HTTP requests. So this is really useful. And to me, when I got started using this technology, I had no idea that I had access to all of these things at the same time. Only by creating with Dialogflow out of the box, if you go to Firebase, if you go to any GCP service that you're using, your action is going to be also available over there. And this is the workaround that I told you that I created. This is just a little piece of my fulfillment that I wrote. Fulfillment, again, being where you wrote the code for your application, not only where you wrote the sentences, but where, if it made sense to your action, you wrote some pieces of code. And then I said, always make my query to YouTube to be the artist and the song that the user typed. Because in case something was not understood very well, I did this small hack. And then there's the rest of the code. It's available for you, I believe, in 2 slides. So if you'd like to see how I built it, I wrote step by step on how you can do everything. And this is how I would do it. I built everything in my natural language understanding, the Dialogflow, and then I went to the simulator on Actions on Google. And this is the response that I had when I said, OKG, Hotel California, Eagles, and then it found a song for me. And then by using rich messages, I added that button, and then I did all this part from the code. I added the YouTube link after that search was made to that link. So if the person was using my application from a smart display or a phone, they would see that on the screen. I also did a workaround, not a workaround, I did like a way that people only with voice would see it, but it's a bit flaky. I didn't do a very good job only with voice, but I really made it screen first, let's say. This is if you'd like to have a look on how I've done it, this is the link. And if you'd like to get started with being a developer for Actions on Google, this is the link that we have for the community. And once your first application is deployed, when it's published, not only the way that I showed you that I have this test application which is working only on my machines, but if it was approved by the team, you use proper language, you added everything which was requested from you, you're going to get $200 in credits of GCP in your account for the course of 1 year. You're also going to get a very cool t-shirt, and I actually have to check if this one is still available, but when I published my first action and it reached, in my case, it was the first one that I got was globalization, because I made my app in Portuguese, English, and Italian. So I got that pin, a physical pin in my house, and they also shipped a Google Home to me, which was very exciting. It was free just because I published my first action. I have to check if this one is still available, but I'm going to say it is. If it's not, I didn't. So you can get a Google Home for free to also give you a bit of incentive to go ahead and start building your first action. So yeah, I'm going to be around the conference. If you have any questions, come and talk to me. I also have stickers, and thank you very much for your time.
Okay, do we have any questions? Any questions? There we are. Let me ask you to come slightly forward. Just there. That's fine. That's fine. Just there. Just there. Just there.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation.
Sorry, where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, hi.
You told very interesting thing about sentiment analysis. I wonder,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
you told interesting thing about sentiment analysis.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have, maybe you know some service in Google or other, which would analyze not only text but also intonation. Because if you analyze just like the sentiment, for instance, for some service like yes, it's great, or it's great, you know, it will be transformed like the same text, but actually the sentiment is different. Have you issued, have you saw such challenges?
So your question is about sentiment analysis, and sorry, I couldn't hear it very well. How much we can rely on it?
Sentiment analysis,
Yeah.
based not only on the text, but also on the intonation, like the voice, the sound. So like, it could be, yes, it's great, or it's great, you know?
Yeah, there are some sentences that there's also something which is neutral, so there is the value 0, that sometimes it doesn't know if it's positive or negative. When I tested it, I tried with words that I knew that I would be very happy or very sad. If you're interested to know more about how sentiment analysis work here, it uses the GCP product called Cloud Natural API. And then there are bits of codes in different languages that you can play with it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Any
Do
more?
we have time? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm on Twitter. I'm here. Come and ask me your questions.
Fantastic.